Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to a very interesting little poem, The Rounded Catalogue Divine Complete. Notice it's in quotation marks. This is poem 25 of the 31 of Goodbye My Fancy. So we are coming now to the very end of the poems of the deathbed edition of Leaves of Grass. And here we're going to have another very controversial poem. In fact, some have argued, Whitman saved his most controversial poem, maybe in the entire volume of Leaves of Grass, to right now. And this will be another theodicy of a kind. You'll remember that we've used this term, that is to say, the explanation of the evil, the suffering in the universe. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at LearnStrong.net, down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt, our playlist, and that you have been exposed to the introductory set of comments, especially for Goodbye My Fancy and the Goodbye My Fancy cluster. Now, it is true that we will have some notes here at the beginning, and the notes here, as well as the poem to follow, Mirages, are going to be fascinating in and of themselves. As we said, notice there's quotation marks. And the fact that there's quotation marks around the Rounded Catalogue Divine Complete will be explained in a little note that sits right below it. Sunday, and then notice dash, 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 dash. That is to say, that old arcane way of not actually saying what Sunday it was. Went this forenoon to church. Now, whether Whitman actually ever did this or not, scholars do not know. A college professor, Reverend Dr. Dash, gave us a fine sermon. We don't know if he's speaking ironic or not. We kind of get a sense that it's ironic when he uses the word fine. During which I caught the above words, that is to say, quote, the Rounded Catalogue Divine Complete. But the minister included in his quote-unquote rounded catalogue, letter and spirit, only the aesthetic things, and entirely ignored what I name in the following, colon, and now we're going to get this list. Now, we've seen this already in another, earlier in other poems in Leaves of Grass, where he provides this kind of note-taking and that like thing. Go back to Osceola, for example, as an example where he'll give the colon, and then he'll just provide the poem. Now, our Nortons will also give us some information here about this poem, first published in Goodbye My Fancy, 1891. And both an earlier draft and a final manuscript printer's copy are in Feinberg. The rough draft shows much revision and many lines not included in the final version. For example, quote, buried and hid beneath the mountains of soil, a lustrous sapphire blue, eternal vital slumbers ready. What is the part the wicked and the loathsome bear within the latent scheme? And by the way, do notice his spelling of loathsome as being, it's actually misspelling, with that E, and it was just always left this way. Now, I want us to begin with starting from Pomenog, and especially passage 7, one that we had a lot of fun talking about, of course, when we were studying this early on in our time together. Do you remember this set of lines, though? He says it this way: I am the credulous man of qualities, ages, races. I advance from the people in their own spirit. Here is what sings unrestricted faith. Omnes, omnes, that is to say all, the plural for all. Let others ignore what they may. I make the poem of evil also. I commemorate that part also. I am myself just as much evil as good, and my nation is, and I say there is in fact no evil. Or if there is, I say it's just as important to you, to the land, or to me, as anything else. And it follows this by saying, I too, following many, and followed by many, inaugurate a religion. And I find this a fascinating set of lines at the beginning of the deathbed edition of Leaves of Grass, and now the final lines in deathbed edition of Leaves of Grass, the Rounded Catalogue Divine Complete. He says it this way. This is what was missing from the college professor, Reverend Dr. Dash, and his fine sermon with only the aesthetic things. What was missing? The devilish and the dark. You'll remember devilish from Song of Joys. To be devilish, you'll remember. And the dark, the dying and diseased. We immediately think of Wound Dresser from Drum Taps, don't we? The countless 19/20ths. Lo, and evil, crude, and savage. Savage is used 22 times in Lisa Grass, most notably maybe in Song of Myself 39. The crazed, we've heard about that in Lisa Grass, given especially his own biography, Whitman's own biography and his family biography. Prisoners in jail, we certainly have seen that. The horrible, rank, malignant, notice our trinities here, right? You'll remember crude when he used that one from Song of the Exposition 5. Go back and look at how he uses that one. He continues, venom and filth, serpents. I find it interesting, given his love of Milton in Paradise Lost, given that he is talking about a sermon in church, that he would throw serpents in there, given obviously what we know about Satan in Paradise Lost. We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net. The ravenous sharks, so he goes from snakes to sharks. And then he goes liars, the dissolute. And as we said, this is obviously a catalog poem. As we've said about these catalogs, it's always fascinating what the order and the way he throws stuff in. So for example, he goes from the venom and filth, and then he goes to serpents and sharks, and then he just goes to liars, the dissolute. And then in parenthetics, what is the part the wicked and the loathsome bear within earth's orbic scheme? Question mark. There's your theodicy question. In other words, what role does evil play in this universe? And then he goes back to animals and insects, newts, crawling things, and slime and mud, poisons, the barren soil, the evil men. We're back to his use of the word evil. The slag. You'll remember this from Song of the Universal 1. And hideous rot. You'll remember hideous, Thy Mother with Thy Equal Brood 6, and then for rot, Song of the Rolling Earth number 1. Well, what game is Whitman about here at 2a? I think he's arguing that we have to appreciate both sides of nature, both sides of life, the positive as well as the negative. At 3a, we'll obviously mention something like the yin-yang symbol, and obviously Lao Tzu's the Tao Te Ching. At 2b, we have another catalog going on here. And it's fascinating, the word order. I'll let you play this one out for yourself. The way in which he builds this catalog here. Well, at 3a, how are we going to relate this to something else? I think that in the back of Whitman's mind, the Blake Songs of Innocence, Songs of Experience of 1789 are all there. I think that's what he's thinking about. Of course, we've talked about this in the archetypes of Blake at learnstrong.net. Of course, we have taken a look closely from Songs of Innocence, Lamb and Chimney Sweep, and of course from Songs of Experience we've taken the Tiger as well as Infant Sorrow. Finally at 3b, how are we going to own a poem like this? Do you agree that we must appreciate the hideous rot of life? Are you comfortable with that idea? And to what degree is studying Lisa Grass helping you to maybe be able to see that perspective? I hope so. Thank you.